Hey, everybody. I'm so excited to have you here joining us today. I see my buddy Charlie's in the room. Hey, Charlie. I am so thrilled because today is a brand new episode of Beyond Autistic Burnout. I'm your host, Carole Jean Whittington, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here today. Today's episode is a true gem. We're diving deep into the world of ADHD autistic entrepreneurship and burnout, and I have the distinct pleasure of introducing you to our incredible guest and best-selling author and entrepreneur himself, Michael John Carley. Did you know, out of the staggering 582 million entrepreneurs worldwide, a remarkable estimated 116 million of them are neurodivergent, just like us. And there are 274 million women entrepreneurs worldwide. Hey, I'm in that number. That's a powerful testament to the unique strengths and talents that our community brings to the entrepreneurial stage. And let's not forget the transformative impact of the last 3 years. Between the Great Resignation and the pandemic, we have ignited a surge in neurodiverse entrepreneurship that's simply awe-inspiring. But as we chase our dreams, burnout often lurks in the shadows. It's a reality we can't ignore. A staggering 77% of professionals of all neurotypes are feeling the weight of burnout in their current role this year alone. And here's the kicker. Over half of entrepreneurs are facing burnouts. Grasp right now. Could that be you? Have you ever tallied up the hours you pour into your business every week? It might hold the key to understanding the burnout puzzle beyond just the hours you log. In just a moment, Michael John and I will be opening up about our personal experiences with burnout, peeling back the layers, and sharing insights you won't want to miss. But wait, there's more. We're also delving into a critical yet often unspoken aspect of our lives, the dance of executive dysfunction. So, my dear audience, get ready for an illuminating conversation that promises revelations, insights, and even a few surprises. Our dialogue today is a beacon of empowerment, a roadmap to thriving in the world of entrepreneurship while sidestepping burnout's grasp. Stay with us and stay tuned for this incredible conversation today. I'm so excited that you're here. Let's get
Welcome to Beyond Autistic Burnout, the talk show designed to empower ADHD autistic professionals like you to thrive in your career, life, and beyond. I'm Carole Jean Whittington, an ADHD autistic business professional who's not just surviving, but thriving after decades in burnout. And I'm thrilled to have you here with us. Each episode, I'll be joined by inspiring guests as we dive deep into transformative strategies and insights. We'll show you how to break free from burnout, ignite sustainable energy, and embrace your authentic self. Together, we'll navigate career challenges, nurture relationships, and excel in every aspect of life. It's time to fuel your success and embark on your journey of empowerment. Let's take this incredible journey together. Get ready to be an authentic leader and unleash sustainable energy in your life. Welcome to Beyond Autistic Burnout. Let's start thriving.
Well, guys, I am so excited to get started with today's show. I am really tickled to death because my remarkable guest is a man of many talents and endless enthusiasm. He's not just an author, he's the genius behind 3 must-read books: Asperger's from the Inside Out, Unemployed on the Autism Spectrum, and the book of Happy, Positive, and Confident Sex for Adults on the Autism Spectrum and Beyond. If you haven't checked out my Autistic Sex series from last June, you can find my interview with Michael John there for more of that steaminess. But wait, there's more. He's not your average author. Nope, he isn't. Check this cool guy out right here. I just love this so much because, we are a multifaceted folks. And here he is surfing because he's an all-around fun guy who knows how to light up a room. Yep, you guessed it. He's a passionate surfer and an absolute maestro with the guitar as well. And he's the cherry on top. He's a late identified autistic, making his journey all the more captivating and relatable. But you know what? Beyond his incredible achievements, he's also my very good friend. And I'm really thrilled to have him today. Welcome to the show, Michael John. I am so thrilled you're here today.
Oh my God, I always get the best intros from you, Carole Jean. Thank you very, very much. And I'm happy to be back with you because it's your energy, which I'm sure your audience knows by now, is just, you're so much freaking fun. You're so much freaking fun to hang out with for an hour. And, it's just all the time great. And again, I never get intros like that. So thank you. I'm pleased to be on the show.
That's one of my most favorite things to do. I always love to shine a light on all of my friends, to light up the incredible people that you are and share that with the world. So you're joining us here today on this really hot topic about entrepreneurship and burnout for our population, because we are at a higher rate of burnout, and with our unemployment and underemployment rates being 80 to 85% globally, boy, we really have found, I know for myself, that, geez, working within the current structure and system didn't work well for me. Entrepreneurship was the answer. How did you make the leap from, corporate to entrepreneurship? How did that evolve for you? What was sort of your journey on that?
Well, it's interesting because I wonder if I've actually ever had a straight 9 to 5 job in my life. I can tell you that, my, employment experience, despite having written, enormously on this, I started out in the arts. My master's degree was in playwriting. So I was in the theater, but I had a cooler than usual, stupid day job. And instead of being a waiter or what have you, I was a minorly diplomat operating out of the United Nations and working for a sort of the politically left of center veterans organization of the time, which was Veterans for Peace. Now, in my interactions with people at the actual UN building, there was a great degree of behavioral minimalism that was, going to be a part of the package. They give you training about how to address this person or that person. And it was actually infinitely more simplified than you might expect it to be. There's just, sometimes in rigid cultures that you might find yourself in, that there's an easier to understand language, as opposed to the corporate 9 to 5 job, where the corporate culture is going to be different in every company that you go to. And, nobody's going to explain it to you. There's not going to be a handbook that says, well, our corporate culture is like this. We socialize like this. Our interview process, which should probably reflect our corporate culture, is going to go like this. They don't tell you that. The UN does tell you, well, we have a much more simplified version than those guys, and we're going to explain it to you. So that was a lot easier. And I will also tell you that they're not the poker players they think they are at the UN. So it's really not that bad. But when you would also, the real crux of that work was, getting projects and then doing the projects overseas. So if I was in such romantic hotspots, such as places like Bosnia or Iraq before we invaded, which is where I did my largest project there, or Cuba, if you're entering into situations in which the value of the job getting done is maybe something that not everybody can do, then you're allowed to say the inappropriate thing to the boss a little bit more than the next person. Whereas, everybody can talk about in corporate America how, they just care about how well you do your work. And that's not true. There's going to be a lot of people that compete with what you can do. And usually how you socially fit in historically has been the measuring stick, not whether or not you got hired, but whether or not you stayed, whether or not you were retained or had a long career there. So, if I, like I said something inappropriate every once in a while, and I did, promise you, you can talk to my, old bosses from that career and they'll be like, yeah, glad he switched careers. But then
Us saying something inappropriate? Never.
a lot, and calling them out when I thought they made a mistake and stuff like that. It was just, it's different because lives are at stake. And, there's a certain degree of difference that comes from that. And then after I got diagnosed along with my 4-year-old son, and was one of the first real sort of core people getting diagnosed as adults who had careers back then. This is like 25 years ago we're talking. There's, Temple, obviously, always, but then there was, me and Leanne Holiday Willie and Stephen Shore and Jerry Newport. And suddenly you're sort of thrust into the nonprofit world. And, I really made my noise, or, people, gave me, maybe, the spotlight a little bit, because for founding GRASP, which at the time was the largest membership organization for adults on the spectrum in the world. And in the nonprofit world, it's also very different and very safe, I think, a lot more, because, if I, as a nonprofit executive, for instance, was to be hiring for a particular position, and I saw somebody's resume in front of me where I could tell on the resume that they had taken this really, really giant risk for something really cool and fallen on their faces, I'm like, I love this person. I definitely want to hire this person. In a for-profit environment, I can't touch that person because I have shareholders to respond to. And you take a giant risk on something like that and you fall, we look bad. Our stock price goes down. It's a very, very different environment. So, going from that, and also, I also have always found it, this is maybe jumping ahead to strategies, but Carole Jean, no matter what job I've ever had in my life, I save the stupid work to take home. Okay. The stuff that I can do while watching a TV show or hanging out with my family while we're all having dinner, that's the stuff I take home. Why do that in the office? In the office, if you have people to relate to, people to manage, stuff, okay. But if you don't, our nonprofits were teeny. So if, you've got your brain work to do, you got your important meetings, go to the office for that. But I'm somebody that works, 80 to 90 hours a week, and I never miss any of my kids' games. So, I'm doing something okay. And I go from there, from the nonprofit world to, doing a lot of consulting, which is on your schedule. So I have stuff to offer your audience, but I could also be like the least impactful, in terms of, your folks that are looking for, how can I get through this 9-to-5 corporate job I've got here right here. So my experience, by the way, with the corporate world really was more from one of the other nonprofits that I ran, which was called A-Step, and now they're called Integrate, where we would, in essence, take a bunch of really brilliant Spectrum college grads from the tri-state area and try and get them internships at the various Fortune 500 companies around New York City. And, it was this selling game between either their HR departments or their diversity departments of, trying to convince them that our kids were really, really smart and that they should hire them. So I had to learn the corporate language from that, really, mostly, so that I could teach it to the students. And it's very, very different. I've even, likened a couple of translations from my book, Unemployed, on the Autism Spectrum, about corporate speak and about how it's a very, very different language. So.
It truly is. And I think I personally wanted to have this conversation with you because I think you bring so many different levels of experience to this conversation, not just strictly like work traditionally in corporate and transitioned, because you've been sort of this out of the box innovator within different systems and functioned within that, a nonprofit. I mean, heck, I've done 30 years in nonprofit, is a totally different world and ballgame. But I've also been in corporate. So I love how you bring the different perspectives to this and how you sort of navigated and found your way in that, because, you bring something up that I think is really worth talking about. And it's, how the hell are you doing 80 to 90 hours a week, still making your kids' soccer games and still being this like amazing human in the world? You do stuff for yourself. You go traveling, you do stuff, with your partner. So how do you do this?
Well, number one, I don't really have, quote unquote, friends. I have a need to have a definitely higher level of engagement and trust and camaraderie with the people I work with. And you fall into that category. And I also, and for a lot of people, that gives you 20 to 30 hours a week right there. that you can just, be working on. Second of all, I've always protected myself. I think that selfishly, I have never stayed in an environment where I didn't feel appreciated. There's just something about my feelings and how important my self-worth is, that if there's, it's like, anybody who goes into the arts, which was, my first career, knows that, the arts will look at somebody like us and go, oh, they're weird. Cool. And the rest of the world doesn't really do that, So it's a place, where you find your community. I had, somebody that I might actually talk about later teach me that at a very, very, young and age, when I was working for that veterans organization, Veterans for Peace, that, usually we will tolerate what we think we deserve. And that's very problematic, I think, especially, I certainly see that, that now that we're coming out of our, just butt ignorance about how this stuff manifests in women and non-binary folk, and how what we've taught to women and non-binary folk about how they should or should not, feel good about themselves. We're regenerating a lot of these conversations again because of the Barbie movie, and, the whole notion of self-worth and self-esteem and likes, on the internet. But in essence, if we're feeling like we're in an environment where we're not allowed to be our true selves, and where, quite frankly, it could just be, our own fears, and that we actually are in a welcoming environment, but we can't trust that because we've had so many bad experiences. And so we're not going to divulge that information because we're like, well, it's going okay, but they'd hate me if they really knew who I was. And that's not the case usually. And no matter what, even if it is the case, you need to be in an environment where everybody knows who you are, so that you know that you're appreciated for who you really are and not who you're quote unquote pretending to be. And that's the sort of selfish self-worth that I think, a little bit more about my background than probably your audience does, but I kind of had a little bit more of a street kid, upbringing. And there's stuff to be warned against that, and there's dangers with that. But I look around sometimes at how much I'm able to keep my sense of self-worth as a high priority compared to others. And I cannot feel luckier for having what some people might call a disadvantaged childhood, in that capacity, because your feelings of self-worth were absolutely number one in your priorities, because you knew that there were a lot of people that could feel very, very smug and contained and satisfied with themselves for looking down on you.
Ooh, you are bringing it in today. Oh my gosh. I mean, so Kim says to have the bravery to move on when not feeling appreciated, there's the confidence required. Oh, absolutely. And, I think too, so many of us hit that, right?
Can I interject? Kim's got a great point, and we are going to be talking about confidence a lot here. And confidence, everybody needs to understand, is something that you can whip up out of nowhere. Because confidence doesn't care how much money you have. Confidence doesn't care what your body looks like. Confidence doesn't care what resources you have at your disposal or how rich mommy and daddy are. It really is something that can kind of be just, there's a saying in sports, fake it until you make it. And I think that there are tremendous amounts of people on the spectrum that do exactly that strategy. Sometimes, it appears to the neurotypicals as though we're being unrealistic in overestimating our abilities. But I understand what's going on there. What we're doing, we may be overestimating our abilities, but that's a natural stepping stone that we need to understand what confidence just even feels like. To suddenly, one day, it's real. You're not faking it anymore, and you have it. And the other point that I would say to your listeners' comment is the whole notion that we are living in an era in which so much ill will seems to happen all around the planet simply because people are afraid to lose their jobs. People can get other jobs. I'm somebody who has an Ivy League master's degree, okay, who I think has kind of gotten a brand that's pretty well respected, and all that. But I've also worked in factories. I've worked in dollar stores. I've delivered newspapers at the age of 10 years old at 4 o'clock in the morning. And my sense of self-worth wasn't negatively impacted by that. My bank account was, but my sense of self-worth, no. People can get other jobs. They don't need to turn a blind eye to an injustice that's happening right in front of them. But they think they do.
Yeah, we've got some other comments here that are really good. Yolanda says authenticity is so important to our self-worth. And, when we're talking about burnout, some of the contributing factors, especially in late identified life, is, for myself, it was not that I just masked. I was masking to the professional level of camouflaging, so much so that I didn't know who I was because I had not had psychological safety or been given the space and the encouragement to explore who I was in the world. And I think, it was interesting. Kim also said in response to your answer to her comment was, I feel that completely. I agree. The fake it till you make it. It's like manifesting confidence by practicing the fake it, and a lot of times I'll hear a lot of like pushback around that sort of embracing or stepping into the energy of something that you want in your life. And people are like, but I don't want to mask because it's not, it's like, I want to go against the fact and go completely in the opposite direction of the fact that I have masked, to fit into the world. And I don't want to do that anymore. And for me, it's never been that. It's, what am I stepping into to explore within myself that I haven't done before? And Brené Brown talks about courage not being the absence of fear itself, but doing the things that you want to do that make you a little uncomfortable anyway. And I think you're really kind of talking about that in so many aspects. When we're talking about also, how do we make the decision to go from working for other people to working for ourselves? And one of the things, and we're going to be diving into this next week with Judy Umbliss, who's just incredible in her book, The Power of Acknowledgement. But one of the reasons most people leave their job in an exit interview is because they feel underappreciated. And Michael John, you just talked about that. Like, you're like, I'm not going to stand to not be appreciated when I know what I'm contributing.
Right.
And you talked about, networking and really making sure that, you bring in like the mindless work home and just can do that on the side when it's no big deal, but investing in the relationships that you have when you're present at work. What are some of the other things that, that's one of the things a lot I hear people are like, I want to get out of corporate. I want to get into entrepreneurship. I've got this idea. I really want to do this, but I'm a social person, and hey, I'm a social autistic person. So Michael John is too. It's not like we don't exist, right, folks? But, but sometimes we worry about the fact that, am I going to be too isolated in that instance? And what are some of the things that you found? What are some of the stuff that kind of comes up that you thought were a barrier, but you really found, hey, I navigate this maybe better as an entrepreneur?
Well, no matter what, you have to have trust, that it's going to work out for you. I think there's one example that I remember from, I had, for some weird reason, as I was kind of getting out of grad school and looking for some way to make money, the theater degree, which for economic reasons, you might as well put on the bottom of a birdcage, right? And, I hadn't gotten the Veterans for Peace gig yet, but I had a bunch of buddies for some strange reason that turned into like these really famous combat photojournalists, like the guy that changed the war, Ron Haviv, from the Bosnian photographs of that whole village that he caught, getting massacred, and, from guys like Les Stone and his work in Haiti, and Chris Roberts, who had to escape Afghanistan, by horseback. I knew all these guys, and I would just look at what they were doing and just going, wow. And, there was a couple of times when they would just say, Michael John, we're going to go, cover, the Jamaican elections, I think 1989. And like, 800 people had been killed in the prior elections, and the same candidates were going up against it. And they were just like, trust us, if you just go, as a writer, just buy the plane ticket, you'll get work, once you're down there. And I was like, I'm not buying that. But I had, the $300 for the plane ticket, for the round trip plane ticket or whatever it was. And so I took that risk. And I went in there, I didn't even have that much food money and stuff like that. But immediately I'm down there and people see that you're doing this crazy thing of, instead of being a writer back at the press center at a hotel, getting feeds, from the government agencies, which are full of it, you're out running around with the photographers, getting into wild and crazy adventures. And people see that, and suddenly NPR is coming up to me saying, we want to buy your tapes. Did I make a killing? No. But I more than paid for my expenses, and I had an incredible adventure, and it gave me enlightenment to so many things, in life. And I did that a few times, with these folks. I think it's really just making sure that you do get out of your comfort zone. And that takes confidence, and that takes bravery. And, we live in a population of an enormous amount of folks that have experienced trauma, which is going to get in the way of their having that. But I also really believe that a lot of the trauma that, we've encountered throughout our lives has usually come from, well, let me give it to you this way. GRASP was based on support groups, peer-run support groups. We had 28 throughout North America when I left, people on the spectrum, running support groups with people on the spectrum. And when I first started doing this, there was a conversation that came up with the group, and we were talking about some school experiences where I suddenly noticed that there was a huge disconnect between me and everybody else in the audience. And everybody in the audience was talking about having apologized when they were being criticized by the grown-ups. And they didn't really know what they were actually apologizing for. So they weren't, consciously apologizing for the offense. They didn't know what the offense was, but they had apologized simply to make it go away, to stop the grown-ups from yelling at them. I was the brat who, went, through the same painful school experience a lot of people did. I had a hippie high school that saved my life in the final years of high school. But before that, I had one of those unpleasant school experiences as well. And then the short term, I never apologized. I could sense somewhere that, again, somebody wanted me to feel badly about my behavior or about how my brain worked. And I couldn't understand why. So I couldn't just acquiesce to, okay, you're right, I need to change, when I didn't even understand what they were talking about. And the only response I had, because I was immature and because I was a little bit of a brat, was to throw it right back in their face and make them hate my guts even more. Now, short term, that's not fun. And it wasn't Hollywood. If you see the stuff on videotape, I don't look like a hero. I look like a brat. Okay? But 30 years down the road, I'm not experiencing the same kind of anxiety, depression, and anger that everybody else is. And that was the aha moment for me, that those early moments of teaching our younger selves to stick up for themselves, whether they should or not. And until somebody can explain it to them, why what they're doing might not be to their best advantage or hurting somebody else's feelings, that had saved me, not hurt me. Even if my short term was a lot more painful than other people's.
Michael John, looking back over your incredible career in different areas that you have worked in different capacities, from being in big organizations to, being on board of directors, but also just sort of being the cog in the wheel. What would you say if you look back and you said, okay, if I were going to give just like a handful of advice to somebody right now today who is experiencing burnout, who's experiencing feeling unappreciated, who's experiencing, maybe they are having to show up and maybe they're apologizing for stuff they didn't do that people are trying to make them feel bad for. I mean, what are sort of your guidance here moving forward? How do we take that information or that knowledge and bring it into maybe creating a career for ourselves?
Wow, where do I even start with that? Oh, I know what I'm going to start with. One thing. My thing got unplugged and I got 15% left. So hang on.
Go for it. No, plug it in. Wait a minute. What's that? Plug it in, plug it in.
Okay, there we are. We're back. Number one is get away from the scripts, get away from the hype, because the scripts and the hype, unfortunately, really, I'm going to sound a little old farty here, but they lack the context and the nuance to actually get us to the real answers that we need. You mentioned masking, okay? When we're trying to pretend to be somebody that we're not. Every time a late diagnosee gets diagnosed, I think it's always helpful for them to understand the difference between when they want to assimilate and when they don't want to assimilate. But when we put a blanket rule over all assimilation is bad, or all non-assimilation is stupid and counterproductive to your career, nobody wins on that stuff. You're looking for, okay, I've read 10 books. So read 10 books and then figure out, where do I want to change because I want my life to improve, I want a better job, I want all this sort of stuff. Whether you want to call me a sellout, those are your words, not mine. This is the life that I want, and nobody has the right to tell me anything different. And where do I not want to change whatsoever? I am who I am, and I need to be who I am. And when we get diagnosed and we walk those long, long walks, and we're reassessing all those past experiences through this new lens that we see everything, and it's very overwhelming because, some people that you thought were really nice to you when you were a kid, and you suddenly go, oh, shoot, now that I think about it, they were just keeping me at arm's distance because they wanted nothing to do with me. Or the people that you thought had been mean to you, and then you go, oh my God, they were challenging me. It was they who believed in me. All these mind-blowing revelations. Start to think about those areas where on your playbook and in your priority list, you want to change and you don't want to change. Because really one thing about masking is that it's an ability. And there are plenty of us on the spectrum that don't have that ability. And for them, life is a lot different. And so, we have to stick up for them and keep them away from people that want to say they're profoundly autistic right now, which is, a little fight that's going on, which drives me out of my mind. But in general, don't fall in line with the scripts. Even something like sometimes at NYU where, I run their autism program, I'll get into very interesting conversations about microaggressions, because a microaggression, if it's coming from a place of race and you're, a marginalized person of color, then you're probably going to have a good gut instinct. But all the times that somebody want to call something a microaggression, no, you're probably making some mistakes. I'm somebody that actually really grows up with the idea that our instincts suck a lot. Oh, mothers know best. No, they don't. Parents can be morons sometimes. I mean, the airline demonstration, put the mask on yourself first, and everybody thinks, oh no, I'm a good parent. I'm going to put it on my kid first. No, they're right. You're wrong. Because if you're dead, your kid's dead. We're not good at instincts. We need to acknowledge when we feel threatened, when we feel pain, when we feel scared. But to immediately mean that if I feel it, it must be true, is the silliest, most farcical thing we can come up with, because that microaggression could just be a non-apparent disability like bipolar. Somebody's, aggression. I've got a friend named Terry Duncan who runs the best services agency up in Edmonton. She even hates the word aggression because it implies that someone wants to harm another person. When really in the autism world, when people are dysregulated at any point, they're just trying to stop being dysregulated. And when you're dysregulated, I've been telling K through 12 teachers this my whole career, and it's still not getting through. When you're dysregulated, you can't listen. You can't even learn. So just give them space. But we don't want to give them space. We want to go up to them and say things like, are you okay? Do you want a glass of water? Which is well-meaning. But, that prevents the person from being able to calm down and regulate. So avoiding the scripts be my first big piece of advice.
Man, there was so much goodness in that. Oh my gosh. And that's
You're
one of the
very,
things
very
that
nice.
that's one of
I
the things I always
honestly,
talk about too, is like masking is a tool. And it's just deciding when and how we want to use it with intention. That's the difference, right?
yeah,
Because it's just choosing how we want to show up and when and in what context. And we're doing it with intention. It's where it leads to burnout and sort of keeps you on that chronic cycle burnout is when you're buying into the thoughts in the script and you believe that things have to be, you know, perfect, they have to be this certain way, there's these expectations, and there is no other way, and that you don't have agency to choose because somehow, somewhere, somebody along the way told you you didn't. And I think that's one of the things that I really was so jazzed when I saw this. So, along with a lot of the entrepreneurial statistics that are out there, because this was a conversation we had last week, and I think it was somewhere on LinkedIn on a post, and I can't remember which one it is right now at the moment, but it was a lot of people talking about, hey, due to accessibility, due to burnout, due to a lot of different factors, I didn't finish college. Or I don't have a college degree. I have a high school diploma, or I didn't even get to finish high school. I hadn't even gotten a GED, whatever was the scenario for somebody. And it was interesting because so much of the script was running that I can't start my own business. I don't have the qualifications to do XYZ, or I can't get a particular job.
well,
And
can I
it's really
stop?
interesting because 35% of entrepreneurs only have a high school diploma. And we're talking 582 million folks, 35% of 582 million people who are business owners. So do not let that stop you.
Agreed. And I apologize for interrupting. I just was wanted to get one thought out too, which is just that from the burnout perspective, and which I know we've completely gotten away from, and that's my fault. I'm so sorry about that.
I will follow you down any trail.
Oh, you're the best. You're the best. I really, I don't think I have anything original to say about, the avoiding burnout part, because the only times in which I felt burnout, I did something really usually dramatic to just take off, go do something for myself. It's not about figuring something out. Usually, your solution actually revolves around pleasure and not hard work or pain or anything like that. Because the other thing to also is that entrepreneurship to me goes a little bit, it's not the proper definition, but it goes a little bit outside starting businesses. Like, I don't think my addiction is to starting businesses. My addiction is to building things. I just want to build shit. That's why I'm not stressed, to work more hours than the next person. But I also want to just throw in here, just to again be an old fart, that I also think that I experience burnout a lot less than other folks, simply because of just the old school things that they tell you about how to take care of yourself. I eat right. I don't eat crap. I try to work out. I try to keep my body in shape. I excuse me, even if I, of course, cough up phlegm every once in a while. But I wrote a sex book because I 100% believe that we live in a society in which, very few people are experiencing too much sex. The vast majority of us aren't having anywhere near enough, even if that means sex with yourself. Because when you think about it, it's just something that regulates you at the very bare minimum, if not bonds you to another person. It's a bonding device. And in this day and age, all of this stuff having to do with taking care of ourselves, that's not a script. That's, a little bit of scientifically proven stuff that we're just going to live longer, and we're going to be a little bit more happier. And we're most of all going to be able to problem solve when things don't go our way. And that goes into the emotional regulation component, which One of my hats, as you know, is now the editor-in-chief of Neurodiversity Press. And the next book coming out is the big book on emotional regulation. And, you know, by Terry Duncan, whom I've already mentioned actually in this. And that really, to me, is 95% of why adults on the spectrum live unhappy lives. It's not because they didn't have enough mock job interviews. And it's certainly not because they didn't take enough social skills classes. It's that whole notion of regulation, of emotional regulation. How do we process life when life doesn't go the way we want it to? And if we have some sense of how to troubleshoot on that and do the preventive medicine rather than the crisis management, we're going to have an edge on the rest of it.
I love that you bring this in because I think it is really relevant to our entrepreneur burnout conversation. Because if you are currently an entrepreneur and you're working more than, let's say, 40 to 60 hours a week or more, I have been there. How much sex are you having, folks? Just a little check-in, just a little friendly, loving check-in from your friend Carole Jean here for a minute.
I'll take it even further. Oh, sex isn't that important. Yes, it is. Shush. Even again, if it's just with yourself, you can love yourself. You can give yourself a treat. That works too. Go ahead.
Because, like you said, it is, when we're talking about burnout, and burnout as a result of consistent unmet needs, one of our basic human needs here, folks, is the physical release, that physical connection. And, I'm an Enneagram 5, so I live all in my head, and I had to learn to connect with my body. I'm also alexithymic, so that's been a fun journey. But what I noticed was, because I'm also a serial entrepreneur, and I've owned several businesses in different industries throughout my life. I wasn't having a lot of sex when I was working a whole lot because I was stressing out about all the stuff that was on my to-do list at work, my work, right? And there was no off switch because there was a fear that if I didn't do it and it wasn't good enough, I wasn't good enough, that I was failing.
Amen. And stop right there, because one thing we have to cover here a little bit is another thing it's going to factor in is our natural ability or inability at certain aspects of executive functioning. It's a poorly conceived conglomerate of all of these abilities and challenges. And unfortunately, emotional regulation, which I think should be the biggest blob of all, is lumped into one of the many executive functioning issues in there. Time management, priority.
Time management when you have time blindness. That is
right.
Really tough.
I mean, all the
that
stuff.
Is a bugger.
Now, I'm going to also take this opportunity, though, because to switch it over to you. And I want to start talking to you and putting the onus on you, because your executive functioning abilities, like many of ours, the interesting thing about things like the hidden curriculum, things like sensory issues, we all usually, if we're on the spectrum, we're all going to be struggling with that to varying degrees. Nobody's fantastic at it. But there are a lot of us that are fantastic at some of the executive functioning issues, as well as really struggling with executive functioning issues. You are somebody who has incredible executive functioning skills. And I want to pin you down, actually, in front of your audience, since I can do that, we're friends. And
you can, because we're friends.
Share with them a little bit about why you think you're able, because folks, I don't know if you're fans of Carole Jean, so you're watching this show, so you must get it to some degree. But look at all the stuff she does. Look at all the various stages of promotional development that she does. Look at, the products that she puts out and how she's got them itemized in various stages. I told her at one point recently, your products, here or there, but the way in which you categorize your products is incredibly unique. And I was like, Carole Jean, I just want to make sure that, people understand, your products, because they're excellent. And, but if they don't understand, if your audience doesn't understand them, they're not going to pick them up so much. But so I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm going to ask you to tell me a little bit about, first, your executive functioning trajectory, how you came to do what you're doing, and then talk a little bit about, because we haven't even mentioned the congratulations that you've just released a book, your first book. I want to congratulate you.
Thank you.
And if there's one person in the autism world that needed to write a book but hadn't yet. It's you. So now we got that cleared out. Talk a little bit about your executive functioning journey. Talk a little bit about how, talk a little bit about the promotion of the book, but in the context of sharing with your audience how you focus that, how you've been able to compartmentalize that in your own head.
Oh man. Okay. I don't think we could talk about writing a book and executive dysfunction without the two going hand in hand. I really don't. And as an author of multiple books, I think it gets easier as you go because you sort of get the routine. But man, that first one, that's a booger to navigate. I'm not going to lie. This has sort of been like 3 years in the cycle of getting and honing those executive function skills from dysfunction, because I was a complete disaster. I mean, for my entire life, I have existed in some form and degree of burnout since the age of 6. And it was interesting because I've talked to a couple other people recently. We were all sort of having this conversation about, man, I can show up and my executive function skills are on point at work. I can organize. I see the system I am on. I can get it all done, point A, point B, but I leave the office and it's a total chaos show. My home, my life, everything else, it just falls apart. I can't seem to do it in my life like I do at work in this one context, right? And I was like that. I could show up and I've had multiple careers in my life. I've been a commercial and residential real estate appraiser, right? I've also been in hospital administration. I've worked in the legal field in real estate law. I've been a catastrophe insurance adjuster. And it was interesting because why not, right? And it all connects. And my undergraduate degree is in fine art, right? But my post-baccalaureate's in vision science. So, put those two together. But in all of that, I can look back and I can compare it to today, and I can see the impact that burnout had, no matter if I was self-employed or if I was employed by a large company or a small business. My burnout level dramatically impacted my ability to execute in executive functioning skills. And I'm also ADHD, so I'm already kind of working against myself anyway in that area. However, I'm entering year 4 of thriving, not being in a degree of burnout for the first time in almost 40 years. And what I have been able to do and what has changed in the executive dysfunction is that I have more resources to pull from. I also have a hell of a lot more self-awareness than I did before, because late identification has also come with the gift of understanding more about not just how my brain works, but how my sensory system processes the world, but also my co-occurring health conditions. Because I also have POTS and dysautonomia and a whole host of some other stuff. And it's how do all of those things, because we can't separate all of that and just compartmentalize it. I am this holistic person. I'm a whole person. And being able to do that now is what has allowed me in the last few years to execute what my brain could see before, but I couldn't put into action. So now it's not just that my brain has these beautiful ideas and these ways to help people solve problems. Have the energy and the capacity, and the executive functioning has drastically improved so that I can help people. And I have created products specifically because I'm like, what would be the best and most effective way to help somebody get out of burnout, to get where they want to go?
So in all those years that you were struggling with it, were you just did you feel like almost like you were programmed to make sure that in the back of your brain there was not an instinct of, well, I have to do this work, but I also have to take care of myself? Did you just not have that at all?
I didn't think I was, on a conscious level, I didn't think I was worthy of it. And I didn't think I thought I had to earn it. I couldn't take care of myself till I earned the right to do that. I had to make sure everybody else was taken care of first. And then and only then was it okay for me to take care of myself, but only a little bit.
I think one of the things that I've found is that when I work against the stereotypical cowboy culture work ethic that we're taught, that I actually get twice as much work done.
That's been a total shocker. Less is actually more in my life now.
Yeah.
Like, I really didn't do a whole lot yesterday. You know, I told you, Josh and I went on a date yesterday, like 5-hour date. It was so much fun. But I knew I needed a slow day yesterday. You know, we've had Michael John and I talked and had a lot happening with my dog who's 12 years old, and it's just not been good. So, you know, that's been an emotional thing. And it's like, I would not have allowed that space for myself in the past. And I knew I needed some emotional regulation, some sensory, physical regulation time. I needed some connection time. I needed some sex. You know what I mean? I'm just going to be candid, right? Because all of those things are what I have learned, but it's also like I didn't feel the pressure that I would have before, that I had to push myself beyond what I knew were my limits. I could step back yesterday. That was a big shift.
You know, I think that I'm suddenly feeling a little irresponsible because I think it's also good to clarify that, you know, your age and your experience level is going to play a little bit, you know, into this because
Definitely.
you know, we see it all the time, you know, where if somebody's, you know, 25 years old and is expecting to, let's say, be hired for a job because they're on the autism spectrum, because they have the lived experience, which can't be denied. But, you know, you're putting yourself into more competition, you know, than New York City actors have to go through. I mean, there's millions of us now. And sometimes I just feel bad because, you know, when you're young, everything is a learning experience. Everything is a learning experience. And I wish that the young knew a little bit more about don't try to start a family immediately. You know, don't try to do all these script things. Go out and do cool things, you know, pay for that plane ticket to go photograph, you know, a place on planet Earth that you've been dying to photograph and see if you can get paid for it. And guess what? If you're hungry, you know, because you don't have enough money for, you know, the best lunch that you used to have back when you were an undergrad, big whoop. You're not going to starve to death. You know, you can go through these small, you know, insults, which we've unfortunately programmed people to think of them as, you know, in this, and the programming is there, you know, to keep up a trickle up income where, you know, as Barbara Ehrenreich would say, that waitress serving you your food is the biggest philanthropist on planet Earth because she's taking a lot less so that, you know, others can make more. So, you know, go have those experiences. Because not only that, I think what you'll find too is that when you ignore the scripts, there's a lot of people out there ignoring the scripts. And you've actually got more of a community or camaraderie than you may think or that you've been told. So, and it just means a more meaningful life when we don't obey those scripts. I mean, I can't tell you as somebody now working in higher education that I see so many, you know, young folks, especially on the spectrum, that, you know, will not even consider a gap year between high school and college because everybody else is going to college. You know, I'm supposed to follow the same path as everybody else. And no, you know, you can go have some experiences and not be ashamed if you're not ready. You know, it's funny, actually. Temple Grandin and I battled back every once in a while. She's, you know, just, we're just both very, very different politics. But we agreed 100% on one thing, and we wrote an article together about it, which was great. We agreed on a really old school approach to high schools, where you take those kids that are just not meant for college. This is not going to be their thing, and trying to slam them into this hole because, well, everybody in the name of equality, you know, can go to college. It's not really true. And if we instead go back to the 1940s and the 1950s, when they might sacrifice the senior year curriculum, and Temple and I were like, throw the junior year away too, and teach these folks to be electricians, plumbers, welders. A welder in New York City, you do your dues, and the next step up is a 6-figure income. It's not bad. And there's always going to be employment in these jobs, and you will probably be out earning your neurotypical peers that go to college to study English, history, philosophy, and political science. So don't do the scripts. Don't do the scripts.
So here's just kind of a recap of some of the stuff that Michael John and I would like you to take away today from entrepreneurial burnout. And that is, you don't have to mask and follow the scripts. You can break out. You can do it your way. There's an empowerment within that, not to fall into the status quo and you should, because there's always a different path. That educational level is not always the requirement for entrepreneurship. There are 35% of entrepreneurs already who don't have anything beyond a high school diploma. So don't let that stop you. If you are currently an entrepreneur, we highly recommend having a bit more sex, checking the hours that you're working every week, for sure. If that's your bag, right? So to do some self-regulation. That's just one suggestion. I'm just saying. And how is it that you're stepping back and really looking at, and this is kind of where we want to bring it together, because this is where we really look at, what is my passion and purpose in life? Because I think one of the things that happens so often, and the reason that corporate or traditional employment doesn't work for so many of us, goes beyond just our sensory needs or our individual needs from our neurotype. It also goes to the fact that we have a unique passion and purpose, each one of us. And there is a place of service and how we want to elevate the world. I know what that is for me. Michael John, what is that for you? What is that place of heart?
Love. And it's a subject that we haven't really talked about, and you talk about it with passion, but you do have to find out what you love and what your passions are. That's absolutely important, because it just isn't going to be sustainable if you don't have that love. When you're doing that work ethic thing that you were describing without the thought in your head of self-preservation, that's maybe the one area where you don't need to protect yourself, as if you're following the path and doing overworking on things that you love, because the love is taking care of you. And, so yeah, agree 100% with what you have. There's actually, I'm not really good with jokes. Like my boys are just like, Dad, I've got a funny joke. And I'm like, guys, you know me. This is going to go whoosh. I'm just not going to give you the satisfaction that you would want out of a father when it comes to jokes. I'm a good father elsewise, trust me. But the jokes thing, it's hysterical. I mean, the boys have fun with the mother, just laughing at me, not being able to get the jokes. I can tell one joke, though, which, especially from an entrepreneurial essence, tells you to stop looking at the scripts. Okay. There's a guy in a job interview. Okay? It's a famous cartoon, actually, but or I tried to make it famous and probably failed. But guy on the spectrum is in a job interview, and the guy interviewing him goes, "Well, okay, so we've gone over your strengths. What do you think your weakness is?" And the guy on the spectrum goes, "I'm too honest." And the employer goes, "Well, I don't think that's a weakness." And the guy on the spectrum goes, "I don't give a rat's ass what you think."
I've seen that one. Oh my gosh. And I think that's what at the heart of every entrepreneur is I don't really give a shit what anybody else thinks. I see something, a problem that needs to be solved. I see how I can make something easier in the world, and I'm going to do it. And when it comes to managing that as an autistic ADHD person, there's other elements and aspects to think about, because burnout is something that we can get into and fall into, or maybe have chronically been in for our whole lives. So it's not just about how do I move forward with my passion and purpose, but also, it's a journey of self in so many ways, a very intimate journey of self in entrepreneurship, because there is no one else to look at or rely on, especially in the early days. And it's just you and the mirror. And I think I learned more about myself as a human, as a late identified autistic ADHD person in this entrepreneur journey than I have maybe. I think it accelerated it in a lot of ways, because I knew I had found a solution for myself, and I had shared it with enough people that I saw it was repeatable, and they were getting out of burnout and were starting to thrive and move down that spicy pepper scale. And all I can think was, I got to figure this out. And how is this sustainable? How do I create a model and a methodology that other people can reproduce in their lives? Because what is possible when we have a thriving autistic ADHD community that is elevating humanity with our passions, our heart, and our purpose? For me, that is what it's all about. And I'm really excited because you had asked me about September 30th. So my book publishes September 1st, and pre-orders are out there right now, but I have a special event planned for September 30th. It's a Saturday, and that is taking the book, Unleashing Your Energy, and it is taking it and applying it. And it is all about energize and restore. And it's an experience day. And it comes with an incredible experience day gift box. And I'm all about the gift box. So it comes straight to your door. And as we go out through the entire day, because I also am all about shining a light on autistic and ADHD entrepreneurs, it is full of products from autistic and ADHD owned businesses. And as we go through each one of those areas of energizing and restoring, we're going to be moving through the 7 areas of restoration that I teach other than sleep. And we're going to experience, and you will experience, what new ways of experiencing energy and restoration are for you, so that you can start to apply these in your life. So if you're in corporate and you want to start your own business, if you're in your own business and you're just trying to figure out how do I get more energy to keep going, this is going to help you do that. Not only take that book and really give you the methodology and the framework, but take it to the next level and let you experience what these different approaches are for yourself. And I'm really, really excited about that. So you can pre-order the book and get access to that ticket. So, hey guys, Michael John, as we're wrapping up, is there a way that you would love for people to get in touch with you if they want to reach out to you, if they want to get your books, if maybe want to hire you to come speak at their company or their business or their organization? How can people get in touch with you, Michael John?
Through the shamelessly self-promotional author website, which is very easy to remember, www.michaeljohncarley.com. And thanks for asking.
Oh, I love that so much. Guys, next week on the show, we've got all kinds of things coming up. I will be joined by one of my mentors and a woman who has been one of the guiding lights in my advocacy journey, Senior Vice President of International Institute for Learning, author of The Power of Acknowledgement, Judy Umlas. We will be discussing the power of acknowledgement and discussing the power of acknowledgement and how has that been preventing burnout? How does the power of acknowledgement prevent burnout? And how it also plays a part in our relationships at home and beyond. Don't forget, you can pre-order my first book, Unleashing Sustainable Energy, today and get those pre-order only bonuses. This book is breaking glass ceilings in publishing, ensuring accessibility for one price, thanks to Hyperlexic Publishing. Your book copy comes with access to digital and print in both easy-to-read font and open dyslexic font, along with audio and video version with captions. It was very important to me that ADHD autistics who are in burnout and whose needs and processing abilities are changing moment to moment can easily access this life-changing book. Reserve your copy today at mindyourautisticbrain.com. Gratitude flows as we come to the end of another incredible episode of Beyond Autistic Burnout. Thank you for being a part of this empowering journey. I'm Carole Jean Whittington, and I'm inspired by your commitment to growth and resilience, my friend. Keep applying these insights to your life, and remember, we're here every step of the way together. Share this talk show with others who could use a boost of empowerment and let's create a ripple effect of positive change. Until next time, take care, stay energized, and keep thriving.